as you get older, you just start to feel like, the doctor's saying to you, it's just happens to you when you get older. It's just part of aging. Take this medication, and that kind of talk. And that's what you see on TV, and that's what all your friends around you the same age are seeing and hearing as well. So you feel like it's just gradually you're going downhill, and appreciate each day because the next day is not gonna be as good because of some ache or pain or new medication you're gonna have to take or whatever. And finding carnivore now, it's like I don't feel like the future is like that is going to be like that anymore. It feels like the gates of the future have opened up in front of you and suddenly anything is possible now. It's like, when you're in your early 20s and you're thinking, okay, so what am I going to study and what's my future going to be like and what am I going to do and I'm going to take on the world and stuff, and it's like you can feel like that again.
Welcome to the Pivoting Wolf. Open conversations with interesting people from varying backgrounds across several different countries around the world. Hello, everyone. This is Rhonda, and welcome to another episode of the Pivoting Wolf. Today, I'm talking with Dave Mack, all the way from Japan. I'm going to keep it short. Dave, welcome to the Pivoting Wolf. Thank you so much for being here today. Can we just
Thanks
get
so much
started
for
by
having me
you?
on, Rhonda.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Why don't you start with telling us a little bit about yourself? Just general background.
uh yeah, I'm a 50-year-old guy, born in Scotland, raised in Australia, and currently live in Japan. I've lived in Japan for the last 19 years, actually coming up on 20 years. And yeah, in the last 3 years, I've changed the way I eat completely, and it's kind of turned me into a bit of an advocate for this way of eating.
Okay. So when you say way of eating, I mean, I know we'll get to that in a minute. But what I
Mm.
wanted to ask you was what I've always been curious, like what brought you to Japan?
Good question. So I traveled a lot when I was younger. I was very, very lucky when I was, uh, how old would I have been? About 20 years old. And I got a job with a company just very randomly. I moved interstate, got a job with them, and suddenly they decided they were opening offices overseas. And I got the opportunity to go with them and help them open offices in different countries around the world. And that was awesome. Like I was 20 years old, 21 years old, traveling around the world, helping to open offices. It was really cool. But I did kind of get to a point where I went, okay, I'm a bit tired of this. I want to move back to Australia. Moved back to Australia, a few years in Australia, and realized, oh, it's a bit kind of same old living in Australia, with a mortgage and commuting 2 hours to and from work each day and all this kind of thing. And I was a bit tired of that. So I wanted to change. And what bigger change is there than moving to Japan? So that's how I found myself out here.
Oh, that's great. Well, I have to tell you, what you just described sounds extremely familiar to me. That's how life was for me too. Before I moved to the Netherlands, I lived in
Mm.
well, I didn't live in Atlanta, but I lived in the suburbs of Atlanta. So as a result, yes, that called for a sometimes up to 2 hours each way commute into the city where I worked. I mean, that's really no way to live. It's
Right.
very
Yeah.
stressful. So it sounds like you have, lived in different countries and had some major changes. But so I hope this question doesn't seem a bit redundant, but I do want to ask you, what was one of the most significant pivots in your lifetime that you want to share with me? Because I don't want to assume that moving to Japan would be it. I mean, it could be anything, like a major pivot in your life that was so significant you want to share?
Uh, Um, I, to be honest, I think there's been multiple ones, and they've all been related.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've gone through major kind of job changes over my life, which has when they've happened, they've been very, very scary. But it's put me in a position now where I no longer worry about change so much, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll explain that in more detail in a moment, but basically, what happened to me is one time I was in Australia, back when I'd moved back, and I was working in a contract position, and I thought this contract position was gonna last for a particular amount of time. I had about 2 years on the contract, and all of a sudden it just stopped, and the contract got ended, and I was out of work, and I was like, "What am I gonna do?" And that was part of the reason that I moved interstate and got that job with the company I was ended up traveling with. But I was in this state of panic, like, I never thought this had happened to me in my entire life, certainly not until I got into my 50s or 60s or something,
Mm-hmm.
and this job's just been pulled out from under me, and it was such a big thing and such a scary moment in my early life, and then it turns out everything was okay. I got a job that ended up being really good where I traveled and all that kind of thing. And then other things have happened like that throughout my life. Like I moved to Japan all of a sudden, and I had no kind of fixed, and I had a limited time where I would be able to be earning an income, and I had to think of what am I going to do, and I was panicking and I was worried about it, and actually, it all ended up being okay. I just
Mm-hmm.
kind of started working on a little internet business, and it all worked out okay, and I was able to support myself. And then this happened again when I was made redundant from a job in Japan, and then this happened again from this thing, and it just kept happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been scary, but what I've learned through this, and it's similar to kind of when you just fail multiple times until you succeed, and I've kind of realized that, I'm gonna be okay. I can look after myself. You
Mm-hmm.
know, all these major changes that happen in life, they happen to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just kind of, as long as you keep putting one foot in front of the other, um, it'll be okay.
Yeah, that's interesting that you described it, because obviously, of course, it's scary, and especially if it happens to you when you're younger and maybe you don't have
Mm,
a certain amount of life experience behind you to kind of inform you in terms of, hey, it's going to be okay. I think the older we get, we kind of learn to adapt a bit.
mm,
But it's always going to be scary to some degree, because especially if it's unexpected.
mm,
Um, but in terms of in other areas of your life, so that's like a job related type of thing. Were there any other pivots? I mean, do you want to talk about? You mentioned this particular way of eating, which I'll let the cat out of the bag. So you're carnivore, and
mm.
that's how I met you. Um, Go ahead and give a shout out to your channel if you'd like.
Sure. So it's No Carb Life on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's related to this carnivore diet. So um, the quick kind of summary is I was looking for a way of getting off alcohol and also reversing my pre-diabetes, and decided to go down the keto route to do
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I experienced some problems on keto, and when I started researching those problems, I realized there were a lot of people out there that were doing this strange version of keto that involved no vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And keto already kind of reduces the amount of vegetables you're eating. But there's
Mhm.
this strange version called carnivore that completely eradicates them.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, maybe carnivore can deal with these problems I'm having. So, and I'm not married to the veggies. So let's try just taking the veggies out of my diet and see what happens. And lo and behold, the problem stopped, and the rest is history. I've been carnivore for basically 3 years now.
Oh wow. Okay. Do you feel comfortable sharing? You said were having problems with keto. Can you tell what were those problems, if you mind?
Basically, bathroom problems.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like diarrhea immediately after eating.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So,
And of course, initially, I put that down to, oh, it must be something to do with all that meat that I'm eating.
mm,
And turns out it was the plants.
mm, those darn persnickety plants, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to talk to you today was, you remember I was mentioning to you that I had watched that video that you shared about your personal life that you released. It's been a couple of months ago, I think. I was wanting to know
Mm.
if we could dig a little bit deeper into that, like you know, I guess kind of like what led up to you even, you know, getting to the point where you felt like, it's time for a change. I'm pre diabetic. You mentioned something about alcohol. Do you want to go a little bit deeper into that and talk about,
Sure.
something more personal things that were going on in your life, and, kind of what was it at stake for you that brought you to this decision?
Yeah, so basically, I went to see a doctor. I think it's like around the 2nd of June 2022. I went to see my doctor to get some results,
Mm-hmm.
and it was that at that point that he told me I was pre-diabetic, and also I needed to do something about my drinking problem.
Mm-hmm.
And spoiler alert, I knew I had a drinking problem, but hearing it from the doctor, and him telling me you need to do something about it now, because if you wait another year, then it's going to be worse, and there's going to be potentially other problems. And so I thought, well, okay, this is a bit of a wake up call, but he wanted to put me on a drug to get me off the alcohol,
Oh.
and the drug is called antabuse. And basically, you take this drug, it doesn't do anything to you unless you drink alcohol, and then it makes you violently ill.
Oh.
And one of
That's
the
kind of
side
a
effects of this
deterrent.
drug, yeah, one of the side effects of this drug is death. And so I wasn't too, I've never been too crazy about medications, and certainly not medications with that as a side effect. And so I was just like, what am I going to do? I need to do something
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to take these medications. So I'm now in this dilemma where it's like this problem is in my face and I've got to deal with it, right? I can't go, I'll do it next month, or I'll do it after the weekend or something like that.
Right.
So the I've done keto and Atkins on and off over the past 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I noticed every time I've done a low carb diet has been that my self-control improves like a lot.
Oh.
And so I said to the doctor, okay, give me a few weeks to see if I can do something on my own. And
Mm-hmm.
I decided I was going to go keto
Mm-hmm.
and see if that helped, because of course my self-control was likely to get better, and it did indeed work for that. It allowed me that, in combination with kind of changing my routines around and that kind of thing during the day, so I wasn't walking past the bottle shop, or I wasn't walking past the restaurant where people are drinking wine outside and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
um
Those drink.
yeah, I was able to stop the alcohol and the sugar.
Um, what do you think it is about going low carb, whether it's keto or carnivore, that enabled you to control your impulses? And like you said that you had more control. when you had those times, whether it was Atkins or whatever. What do you think is the why? Why do you think that is?
I think it's maybe a couple of things all coming together. The first is I think my body just doesn't do well with carbohydrate.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm consuming carbohydrate, it's just like I get into this cycle of I need more of things. I'm never satisfied, you know, like when I put, I don't know, a chocolate, when I put a bit of bread in my mouth, when I put anything in my mouth, the thought is not, oh man, you're enjoying this, aren't you? It's where's the next one coming from?
Yeah.
And so I've got that kind of personality, and they have that effect on me. And I've got this personality where I'm I just can't stop. You know, what is it they say? One is never enough for
Right.
a thou yeah.
Right.
Um, and so, it just doesn't stop. And when I get the carbohydrates out of my diet, that just when I guess my body is completely free of them, or completely free of processed carbohydrates or something,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that gets turned off.
So,
And
mhm.
that improves my self-control in other areas as well that relate to work, for example, and stuff like that.
So it sounds like there's that's the connection with the alcohol as well. So I assume that if you have this reaction to carbs of like wanting to know where the next one, like because I know you and I have spoken about how there doctors like Dr. Sivas literally refers to there's carb addiction. There is such a thing, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So I guess that overlaps with the alcohol. Is that where the you said you had a problem with alcohol and
Yeah.
you said spoiler alert, you knew it, but it kind of hits different when
Yeah.
you hear that from their doctor. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
And I think that it's something that's hereditary in some way. Like my dad
Hmm.
was an alcoholic.
Hmm. Okay.
So yeah, I guess it's some kind of genetic kind of predisposition to like you see carbohydrates and then you know, you just you go all out.
Right. So I want to just ask you, because you mentioned you had been on Atkins, you had tried these different things. You said for the past
Mm,
couple of decades. Um, I'm just curious, what drove you to want to do those things, even in the past. Like I know the carnivore is kind of a newer thing. You said in when I say new, I mean it's like in the recent years, in the last 3 years.
mm.
But when I hear you say you were doing Atkins and other things, for the past couple of decades, what was prompting you to want to adopt that low carb life back then?
Yeah, so the original thing with Atkins was it was back in 2000 when I tried it first time. So that's
Hmm.
25 years ago.
Hmm.
So he'd just republished his book in the last year or so. So I bought the New Diet Revolution and I was reading it and I thought, I think I'd seen someone talking about it on TV. And I'm reading it and I think this sounds crazy, but nothing else has ever worked for me. And the reason I was reading it was I've never been like I've been close to being obese sometimes, but I've never been like massive, 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 right? But
Hmm.
I've always had this pot belly, no matter
Hmm.
what weight I was.
Hmm.
And I just always wanted to get rid of it. No matter what I did, I could never get rid of it. And then when I heard about Atkins, it was like, sounds crazy, but I've tried everything else and nothing else works. So let's just give it a go.
Hmm.
And my body responded so quickly in a
Really?
positive way. And like I never got off the induction phase of Atkins, which is basically, it's like almost zero carb,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
like hardly anything. And I was how I would have been 25 at the time. So, um, I wasn't worried about, I wasn't thinking about things like long-term health and all that kind of thing. So I wasn't even thinking about, well, maybe I should eat veggies for this, that, the other. So I was just going hard on the animal products. So I was
Yeah.
basically doing carnivore the first time I did Atkins, and I felt amazing.
Wow.
But I allowed myself to get talked out of it, because he'd republished the book. There was a lot of kind of clickbait documentary style shows and current affairs shows on TV exposing Atkins at the time. One of the computer programmers that my manager that I worked with used to be a nutritionist in a past life, and he was telling me, like, if I didn't eat bread, I was gonna die, and, or it's bad for your brain and, all this kind of
Oh,
thing,
wow.
and so I eventually let it go. But I always had that memory that I feel better doing this, and that's why I've always gone back to doing low carb keto over the years.
Yeah. So, do you think that the being pre-diabetic and the need to quit alcohol was the primary reason why you came to carnivore this time? Or, at what point did you get back on a low carb, leading up to carnivore? Like, did you, like, after you got off of Atkins and you went back to eating bread and whatever, like, what happened in this in between time between then and 3 years ago?
Like, it's just a blur of it's just a blur of lying under donuts and, going back to keto for a while and then going back to the donuts and, all that kind of thing. It's just,
Really?
2 decades of, yeah, mess, basically. But at no point I couldn't sit down and say that I really ever had a diet that I thought a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
I was never eating I was never kinda consciously eating, and I think that's also to do with my personality. It's all just about, some kind of satisfaction in the moment,
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
and yeah. So, yeah, it's just a mess up until that point where the doctor's gone, "Yeah, alcohol and prediabetes, mate, you gotta do something about it."
Do you think that I'm just curious as to how you must have been feeling during this time when you said you were under donuts and whatnot. Like, how were you feeling? What was life like, when you're in that phase? What was going on? And because I know that there's a day you go to see the doctor, right? And then he tells you, you need to do something about the alcohol. You're pre-diabetic.
Mm,
Okay,
mhm.
and then you're like, okay, then you get serious about it. I get that line in the sand, but this period leading up to that, what was life like then? How were you feeling physically, mentally? You know,
I felt horrible. Um, you know, like, I never slept well. I couldn't wake up easily. I was always sore when I woke up. I never wanted to exercise. I never wanted to do anything. I was always lethargic. When I got to work, I'd be sitting at work and I'd be like, I just can't be bothered. Like I'd be reading reading random websites that I didn't even care about until
hmm
someone else was in the office and noticed me and I had to then, do some work and um yeah, I think a lot of I mean, it's not that I was a lazy worker or anything. Like I've always been a very productive worker, and I've always been what I think is a pretty high achiever at work. But like physically, like I was always fighting against my body to get to that point. Like my body has always kind of been dragged along for the
Yeah,
ride, kind of thing.
right. How must that have affected your family life? If you care to share a little bit about that, feeling miserable for so long and, um, Because I'm just,
I
if I can, if I may, I just want to just preface this to say, I did a research paper years ago when I was in college. It was called The Effect of Food and Exercise on Human Behavior. And the research was quite remarkable. I don't think that enough thought is given to the connection between nutrition and exercise and, like, literally mental health, and
mm,
how it can affect your moods, how it can affect your, well, there were even cases where I found there was a study where there was a group of people that were in this study. They were showing symptoms of schizophrenia. Okay.
mm,
But lo and behold, they didn't have schizophrenia. They were suffering from some side effects related to some nutritional abnormal things and deficiencies and things of that nature. So it just always makes me curious, how other people, if you have the awareness enough to even think about, oh, how do I feel mentally, psychologically, emotionally, whatever, when I'm at this stage here. I know that when I first went low carb, and first my first attempt at carnivore, as you know, one of the most remarkable things was this mental clarity that I was not expecting. So I'm just curious, and I wanted to just give that level of detail before you answer. If you can share with me, across the board, emotional, psychological, just mental, how was it then? And then, tell me what has been your experience in that regard since you went
mm.
carnivore. And was it unexpected? What was, that about?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things that change on carnivore are things that you didn't really realize in the moment were wrong. Um, but in the before times, like some of the some of the things that would affect me were like I'd do a day of work and then I'd be on the way home and I'd get to the front door and I'd be like, I can't do this. Like I can't I'm so run down and exhausted, and now I've got to go inside and I've got to be happy, 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 and I just don't think I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, that was like that feeling hit me more often than more often than I care to admit. Um, but the other thing that's affects home life as well as work is when you're eating a bad diet, you don't realize how emotional you are and on how much of a hair trigger you're sitting on, Um, like, for example, your wife says something to you and you take it completely the wrong way and you kind of react and like and she's looking at you like, what? And just your reaction is to something that you read into what she said that's got absolutely nothing to do with what you were talking about or whatever, just because you're emotional,
Mm-hmm.
and so being on carnivore now and you're much more clear-headed and like you know um you're much more stable, like, you you don't have those moments, and even if you have a fleeting one of those moments, you're in a better place to kinda step back and go, "Hang on, is that really what she meant?" Like, it's easier to be much more objective about things,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where it comes into work as well, where you'd normally if you're working on a project with other people and you're like, "My idea is best for this project, you gotta accept my idea," and, you're
Mm-hmm.
fighting for your ideas and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And now it's easier to step back and go, you know what? Who cares whose idea gets accepted for this?
Mm-hmm.
No one's coming to give me this big gold certificate for getting my idea accepted. No one gives a crap,
Mm-hmm.
It's not like when I'm 65 and I'm retiring, they're going to go, oh, we remember that awesome project that you worked on.
Right.
Um, so it's much easier to step back and go, let's be rational about this.
that sounds like that sounds like that had to have been completely unexpected. I mean, I just can't
Yeah,
imagine because I could imagine like, okay, if you're going to change your diet, you expect to, okay, well, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to have more energy. I think it's a fair expectation to think that you're going to sleep better. You're going to have more agility, more flexibility. These physiological, physical things. It's reasonable to expect those, but it sounds like that was just completely unexpected. I wonder what was your wife's reaction? When did she start to notice this difference in you? Did you guys talk about that?
uh, we haven't really talked about it. Culturally, things are a bit different in Japan, so,
Uh-huh.
like, a lot of things just kinda go unsaid,
Yeah.
but it was a bit of a shock for me, and, I mean, the reason it's so much of a shock is because you live with yourself your whole life, and you're eating this garbage your whole life, and so you don't know that this is not actually you,
Hmm.
it's like you're drugging yourself every day with this garbage that's messing with your head, that's messing with your dopamine receptors, messing with all of this stuff, making you exhausted, but you just think this is normal life.
Hmm.
And so then when it changes, it's like, it's like you hear the angels kind of singing, or the sheet gets lifted across, or something.
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Do you want to share what other things happened? What were some of the big changes that happened? You know,
Yeah.
physically or
Um,
otherwise?
yeah. So, I experienced the same things that most people experience on carnivore, as far as weight loss, more energy, clearer thinking, better sleep, all those things. But the massive change for me was the arthritis in my left knee just vanished.
Oh, really?
And this was massive because I um I live in Japan, and in Japan you have to walk everywhere.
Hmm.
And so I every day I'd have to walk to the station, and walk from the station to work, which is like a 15-20 minute walk, and then walk from work to the station, and then back home again every day. And there's also a lot of stairs in Japan. So you're always climbing up and down and up and down and up and down. And if there's anything that someone with arthritis hates more than walking, it's climbing.
Hmm.
And it was just all it was exhausting. So I'd be exhausted by the time I got to work. I'd be exhausted from a day of work, and then I'd be exhausted by the time I got home. And I just like slumped down in front of the computer or the TV like a zombie. Like, I'm not even looking at what's on the screen. I'm just like just zonked out. This is my life now. And
Yeah.
I'm at this stage, what am I, 46, 47? And at that age, I'm thinking, this is it. This is the best it's ever gonna be.
Oh, wow.
Just getting up, going to work, coming home exhausted, and then looking at a screen and not really recognizing what's going on in front of me. This is my life now. And, this was all because of this arthritis. And even I'm sitting on the couch, zonked out when I get home, like my leg elevated, there's still that little kind of twinge all the time from the arthritis, like, I'm still here kind of thing. And, yeah, so it was just the wheels were falling off. And then 2 months into carnivore, gone. I've gone from this exhausted, kind of lumbery walking everywhere to running across the road feeling like I'm back in high school again.
Jeez,
And
that's
there's just,
incredible.
like, amazing. And this is one of the I've interviewed a lot of people talking about carnivore, and this is one of the most common things that people experience is the joint pain goes, the back pain goes, the arthritis goes.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's just like it's almost like you suddenly started eating all this saturated fat, and it's oiling your joints or something. It's really weird.
Right. I
But
mean,
coupled with that, oh, sorry.
no, go on. Yeah.
Coupled with that, when I was 17, I had a stroke.
Oh, really?
and that left me with a weaker right side.
Oh, okay.
So that means that I limp and I've got slower reaction times on my right side, and it my most of my when I have to do like typing with my phone or something like that, it's always on my left hand now, despite being right-handed. Um, but once I went carnivore a few months in, things started to improve in that area as well. So
Really?
the limp became less pronounced, and my right side is a bit stronger, and it's never going to be the same. It's never going to be 100% what it
Right.
was, but it is improving. And so I've gone from having arthritis in my left knee and limping with my right leg to having no arthritis in my or no pain in my left knee,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to not have as pronounced a limp now with my right leg. So
Mm-hmm.
walking, running, going up and down stairs is a breeze now compared to what it was 4 years ago.
That's extremely remarkable. So it sounds like if you because you had the arthritis and the pain from the arthritis in your left leg, you
Yeah,
probably had to rely more heavily on your right side to kind of compensate for that pain, right? Because you're probably
right.
compensating in some kind of way, hobbling along, but you were already hobbling along, with the right side. You already had that side that was, diminished. So that put a lot more strain on your right side. So by alleviating the pain from the left side, the right side got a little bit of a break, right? So, um,
Yeah,
have you discussed this with
yeah.
your doctor? What do your doctors say about this?
No, I haven't been to doctors except to get blood work.
Yeah.
Because they're all going to tell you the same thing. Oh, your cholesterol, but I'm feeling better. Ah, the sky's falling down. So,
Mm.
but I have talked to I spoke to Anthony Chafee about this a couple of years ago,
No, he's a
when we
surgeon,
did an
right?
interview together, and
Is he a surgeon?
yeah, um, resident neurologist, I think.
Okay. All right. I
Yeah,
know who he
um,
is. Yes. I was getting him confused with
yeah.
there's another doctor who I thought I heard him talk about how he got threatened by his whoever the corporation that he was working under because instead of having people go under the knife to get knee replacements and whatnot, he was giving them recommendations to go on carnivore, and they were healing themselves and quite remarkably. So he was reducing the number of surgeries. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Uh, I think that's Sean Baker, yeah.
Okay, I think that yes, I think that is Sean Baker
Anthony
and
Chafee, and
Anthony Chafee.
yeah, he was saying that probably what's happening is the myelin sheath, where all the nerves are, is just able to do a bit more repair than it has been because I'm eating a high fat diet.
Wow, my
So the messages are
gosh,
getting through.
I I'm gonna look more into that. I've done quite a bit of research already into some of the physiological effects of carnivore and understanding how that nutrition can help to rebuild these parts of the body. But that's fascinating. I think I'll look more
Yeah,
into what he has to say around that, and that makes perfect sense because when you were talking about that, I was gonna comment, but so if I can just go ahead and talk now about
sure.
I myself, when I was younger, much younger, I want to say I was probably in my late 20s. I used to have knee aches and back aches and whatnot. I've had a series of accidents throughout my lifetime. I mean, crazy accidents. When I was 5 years old, I was in a train wreck. I didn't get hurt in that, but just the calamity of accidents that have followed me throughout my
Wow.
lifetime. Train wreck. I was um, I grew up in California, and I was roller skating on the beach when I was a kid, and this big bodybuilder from like Venice Beach was just blazing down the bike path, just going, I don't know how fast he was going, and he just crashed right into me while I was skating and just knocked me out, and I almost had a concussion. So that was that, and I hurt my knee. And then I've had several skating accidents, smashed my tailbone, just a lot of sporting type injuries. And then I got hit by a car when I was roller skating down Santa Monica Boulevard. This old lady was driving her car. She could barely see over the steering wheel, and she just came flying out of an alley without even stopping. And she ran into me, and then her car and me on the front of her car ran into my friend that was skating beside me, knocked us both out into the street. And us goofy kids, we were young. We just got up and roller skated away and just kept going. And then a year later, I was in a car wreck. A truck ran my little Volkswagen Rabbit over a cliff in Pacific Palisades. So
Wow.
when I say I'm really lucky to be alive, I'm lucky to be alive. So when I was in my 20s, I had like a lot of aches and pains.
Mm,
And I mean, I would literally just lock up. I could just be in the kitchen, just you know, drinking a glass of water, just something just totally benign, just literally standing there, and then all of a sudden, just you know, really debilitating pain in my knees and my back. And in 2012, I sustained a major back injury that put me out of service for like 3 years. I slept on a couch sitting up straight for 3 years. I was getting spinal injections in my
wow.
back. I mean, it was horrible. The pain was so bad. I had moments where I thought, I just can't live like this. I literally cannot go on
Mm,
living like this. I mean, the pain was so sharp and so devastating, it would take my breath away. Like I literally couldn't move, and it was horrible. But what I wanted to say in listening to you talking about your knee,
mm,
so and I knock on wood, I hope I don't jinx myself, but I have noticed in the past few years that um, when I have grains, my knees are like,
yeah.
and it's like a light switch. If I
Yeah.
mess around and dilly dally with it, like we talked about, dilly dally and dabbling, you justify, oh, well, I'm just going to have a little bit, da, 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 oh, I'm just going to go to this party. I'll just keep it simple. Just blah, blah, blah. You never can escape it. I can never escape it anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't have celiac. I don't have any like that I know of. I don't have any like condition or anything like that. All I know is that when I eat grains, bread, pasta, rice, whatever, um, it's going to let me know. My ankles will
Mm,
swell up like little balloons. My knees will feel, that like I will feel like the Tin Man, just rusted out,
right.
just just painful, and I'll be limping around, and then I have to give it a week or two, and then go completely hardcore, and then it goes away. You have a little bit of
Yeah.
something, and it comes back, and then it goes away, and it's like, why do you keep playing around with this light switch? I mean, are you like the kid that's going to stick your finger in the light socket? Like, what's going to happen, and so it's interesting. Your story is remarkable about this, and I want to look more into it. Give myself continued persistence and reminders to stop poking the light socket, because I do
Mm,
sometimes, especially in social settings. It's really hard. Um, but I'm in agreement with you, and but your story is even quite remarkable because you told me you had a stroke when you were 17, and these things, and it just validates what I have experienced myself. But now it's like putting science to it.
Mm,
There's got to
mm.
be a reason for that. I know inflammation is a big, huge culprit in a lot of this. And I know that there will be people who will not want to hear this, but I know that, there is a certain degree of inflammation that's going to happen from consuming some vegetables. Guarantee there's going to be inflammation from consuming grains and sugars and stuff like that. I mean,
Mm.
we understand that now. Even insulin
Right.
spiking can cause inflammation. If you're extremely sensitive to it, as obviously I must be, you're going to have these problems. So it's amazing how some people can just tolerate that stuff and they're fine. They don't gain weight. They don't have these issues. And then there's those of us who just, like me, sticking the finger in the light socket.
I think though, even the people that can tolerate it are only tolerating it better. They're not actually tolerating it well.
Yeah.
So I think even the people that are tolerating it better don't realize how bad it is for them and won't realize how bad it is for them until they go for a period of time without it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll go, "Oh, you can feel this good?"
Yeah.
And that's really what I've noticed it's about for most people is it's just this awakening to, "Oh," it's like I feel like bursting into song. It's like, I can see clearly now. It's like the it's like the shutters are lifted. It's like you had fly screen doors on your over your eyes your whole
Mm-hmm.
life, and they're
Mm-hmm.
suddenly lifted, and it's like, oh, I can see everything in a better light now,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel calmer and happier looking at it all.
Right. Well, other than the obvious, the physiological, the mental, the mood improvement, all of these things, um, I want to ask you, um, because this is a major change, it's had a tremendously beneficial effect on your life. So I'm going to ask you two questions. You can choose to answer one or both if you'd like. So, if your life had chapters, what would this current chapter that you're in be called? Or what three words would describe the experience you're having right now? You can either answer one or both of those questions.
Um, hmm. Okay. The chapter would be called Midpoint.
Okay.
This would be part two of a three-part book, I think.
Oh, well,
So
do tell.
yeah, I'm like the way I feel now. I think one of the things most people feel like on carnivore is like as you get older, you just start to feel like, the doctor's saying to you, it's just happens to you when you get older. It's just part of aging. Take this medication, and that kind of talk. And that's what you see on TV, and that's what all your friends around you the same age are seeing and hearing as well. So you feel like it's just gradually you're going downhill, and appreciate each day because the next day is not gonna be as good because of some ache or pain or new medication you're gonna have to take or whatever. And finding carnivore now, it's like I don't feel like the future is like that is going to be like that anymore. It feels like the gates of the future have opened up in front of you and suddenly anything is possible now. It's like, when you're in your early 20s and you're thinking, okay, so what am I going to study and what's my future going to be like and what am I going to do and I'm going to take on the world and stuff, and it's like you can feel like that again. And that's what it feels like now. Anything's possible.
That is so powerful what you just said. It resonates with me so deeply because, and I appreciate how you've connected this to carnivores. I mean, if I don't want to sound so cliche, but it seems like from what you've described that you've gotten your life back. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
the
it
difference
feels like
from
it. Yeah.
dragging yourself to the front door, you're exhausted, you're on the couch with your leg elevated, you're like, oh my gosh, I just can't keep doing this, and you're only 47, which is young, you know. I mean, it's not 27, but it's 47. It's not 97, I mean, it's
Mm.
pretty relatively young. And for you to describe how much of a transformation your body has made, and even your mental well-being has made, and to hear you say that anything's possible, that is absolutely amazing. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about that for a second because um, the whole reason why I started this pivoting wolf in the first place was because I had like aha moment a few years ago. I'm like, I felt like I had done what I was asked to do. Society kind of nudges you along. Get out of high school, go to college, get a degree, get a job. Da, 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 da.
Mm.
You've got this kind of like mapped out life plan that is the status quo, right? And I always felt like I was not necessarily on the right path. And I felt like this inner voice was just screaming at me, like, you're just not really doing what you were meant to do. There's got to be more. So, but I want to make the connection because if you don't have your health, it doesn't matter what's going on in your head up here. You could be thinking,
Right.
I want to go climb Mount Everest, or I want to go do whatever. I want to go pursue this dream. But if you cannot get out of the house and walk around without, squeaky, squeaky, can't even hardly, you can't climb the stairs to get up to the thing to go do the thing. You're just gonna just live vicariously through a bunch of YouTube videos.
Mm.
So I think it's a really great segue, for you to share, like to what you just said to me. I already had this vision of like, oh, there's like the gates open, like you said. So I'm curious to know, what does chapter 3 perhaps look like for you? What do you have in mind? What are some things that you want to do? What are some bold moves that you want to make with this new, you know,
Um,
deal that you've got going
I
on here?
I think the more I've got into this, the more I feel like one of the things that makes me really happy is almost being like an evangelist for this way of eating, or being an evangelist for anything on the ketogenic spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
because, and this is why I started the channel in the first place, is not because I was, at the time, it wasn't because I was like, oh, I feel so good. It was because I was angry, because I was feeling good, because I was realizing after 2 decades of going on and off Atkins and low carb and all that kind of thing, and realizing each time I felt good, but being told, "You're crazy, this is wrong, you're gonna die, you're gonna kill your brain because you're not eating Wonder White," or whatever, and, um and then having this again in 2022 and realizing I've got to be out there. I've got to put my voice out there as well, because I know this works, because every time I've tried to eat this way, I feel so good. And so I think part of my future is just, talking about this more as much as I possibly can, whether that's speaking at places, or eh, just, yeah. I can't really imagine what it involves completely yet, but just, getting out there and trying to share the message as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Have you thought about writing a book?
Um, I've my whole life I've thought about writing a book. No, not specifically about this, but yeah, I don't know, and I need to wait till AI gets good enough that it can do it for me. I can just put in some. I don't have the patience. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm constantly screwing up paper and throwing it away. You know.
I understand. Well, do you have any? We're coming to close to the end of our time here, so I just want to ask you: is there anything else, generally speaking, that you want to share with the audience? Whether it's anybody that's experiencing some kind of a transformation in their life, whether it's carnivore related or not. Any sage words of advice for the audience?
I would say two things, and it's applicable to most things in life,
Hmm.
and that is this is one thing that's lacking in Japan is just because you failed doesn't mean it's over. Failing is just a learning experience. Get back up and keep going, right? And this comes to whether you're doing a diet or anything in life. Like in terms of a diet, you've fallen off the wagon, doesn't matter. Don't beat yourself up about it. Learn
Hmm.
from it. Get back on the horse as soon as possible. And
Hmm.
so went from a wagon to a horse there. I'm not sure why, but anyway. Um, so just get back on, start doing it again because the more, again, whether it's diet or it's something about your business or whatever it is, unless you keep pushing forward, nothing else happens. It's up to you, and failure is part of success.
Hmm.
And so just keep moving forward. And the second point related to that is, I mean, specifically around carnivore or any kind of diet that you want to do, is take it one day at a time. Don't look at a diet when you first start. Don't look at a diet and think, how am I going to do this for 12 months? How am I going to do this for the rest of my life?
Hmm.
It's just, I can't do it. Because when you project out like that, what's going to happen is you start doubting yourself. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And then when you're doubting yourself, you start talking yourself out of even doing it in the first place. And before you know it, you've got a packet of Oreos in your hand. So,
And a bottle of wine.
right. And
Just
so
dunk the Oreo in the
just,
wine, and
yes, just take a day at a time and focus on getting through day number one without cheating. And you just got to focus on getting to bed on day one without cheating. And then when you wake up on day two, there's going to be two thoughts that you have immediately upon waking up. And the first one is, I did it. And the second one is, I feel so much better than I did yesterday morning. And I slept much better last night.
right.
And now all we have to do is focus on getting through day two. But it's a little bit easier because of those two good feelings you had when you first woke up. Your resolve is a little bit stronger.
Hmm.
And then you just keep repeating that process. And every day your resolve gets stronger until there's a point where you're not thinking about, I've just got to get through today. And you're not thinking about the future because you're just happy with the way you're eating.
And I'd like to add to that, if I may. Um, if you give yourself, if you go into it with the mindset, I'm going to give myself a week. At some point, the biology, the physiology, the hormones, everything is, your body is going to kick in. There's going to be a point where, if you just go in knowing, okay, this may not be the day one's probably not going to be easy, but this is where I kind of lean on stoicism. Like, it is what it is. Just deal with it.
Mm-mm.
Oh, know it, own it. Going in, just face it. Don't feel like you have to pacify that little whining voice that might come out. I want my Oreos. Just tell it to sit down and shut up. Over a period of time, and it is a relatively short period of time, I find, your body is going to do the rest for you, because
Mm.
as you go more days, you will literally stop craving that stuff. It's going to become easier, not just because of willpower or things that you're doing mentally to talk yourself into keep going. But you're likely to, your insulin's not going to be spiking. You will, if you were insulin resistant, you will soon not be. Sugar just, as they say, it activates the same pleasure center in the brain as drugs. And, once you get that out of your system, your body's going to pick up a lot of that heavy lifting for you in terms of helping you to not want those things. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and anyone that tries carnivore is going to be amazed at what
Mm-hmm.
a diet with a high amount of saturated fat will do for satiation and calmness.
Mm-hmm.
It it's something that you've never experienced before.
I do, I agree with that. And I hope you can give me one more minute. You just sparked one more question in my mind because I can imagine the person who's going to say, meat every day? But yeah,
Mm.
because I experienced
Mhm.
this myself.
Mm.
Honestly, and you know me. My story with carnivore is newer than yours. I've not been in it for as long as you are, and I feel even almost like I shouldn't say I'm completely 100% all in it because I'm just back on it because I explained yesterday. We're on again, off again through different things, but for the person who is thinking, how do you just eat meat every day? Wouldn't I get tired of that? What's your answer to that question? Because I had those moments. I'm just like, oh, I don't want another
Yeah.
chicken wing. I don't want another hamburger patty. I just want I just want a salad. And it was hard. What would you tell someone who's thinking that? Because we know it works, but sometimes you have to get through those little bumps.
Mm. I think, the most important thing for people to understand who haven't tried carnivore is and have that feeling,
Hmm.
is it's understandable that you have that feeling because you're coming from the perspective of having endless options
Hmm.
and that being normal, right? If you look at any other species, no other species has endless options. They just eat what they eat, right? And they never go, "Oh, I'm sick of these gazelles," Um, but I don't know a lion to talk that way, to be honest.
That's hilarious. These
But
darn rabbits, they're just getting so boring, right?
yeah. But, the thing is, once you go carnivore and once you're only eating this limited amount of foods, your perspective on food changes, right? You don't have that need for variety anymore. Your whole physiology changes so that you're not sitting there looking at someone crunching potato chips and going, "Oh, I need to have one of those. Oh, I
Right.
wish I could put one of those in my mouth," because the emotional connection is like dissipates and eventually goes completely to that food so that you could sit there watching someone eating potato chips or this the most amazing cake you've ever seen in your life and you're looking at it going, that just looks like poison to me.
Yeah,
I can appreciate the beauty of the cake, but
right.
what
That
what
looks like a pain.
chemicals did they need to put it together?
That looks like a pain in the knee to me, or something like that.
Yeah,
That's what I would be
that's right.
thinking. Is like, ooh, that
And
looks like I'm gonna have a backache and swollen ankles tomorrow. You know?
right. That's another part of the perspective shift as well, is you start to feel so good, and like we talked about, good in ways that you didn't know you had a problem in those areas before.
Hmm.
Um, you start to feel so good that no amount of cake or ice cream or any of that stuff can tempt you to go back. So it's just a whole perspective shift, but you've got to try it for about 30 days to get to that point, at least 30 days to get to that point.
So it's That's a very interesting insight that you offered. Thank you for that. This whole notion about having unlimited options. I never thought about it that way, but you were correct. And that's perhaps not normal. I'm sure even our ancestors were not having, I mean, it's not like they just pulled up to like the buffet and were like, oh, I'll have this, this, and this. And it's not like they could just eat whenever they wanted to either, which is why we're so designed well for fasting because that's how our ancestors were. I understand that. So, but just putting that in plain, uh, just plain insight like that is really super helpful. And I think that
Mm,
if you can just adopt that mindset that like, hey, it's not normal to just have unlimited options just all day long, 24/7, um, huge portions, and all of these things. So, that really is helpful. And I hope that people get something out of that. And, to cap that off, nothing tastes as good as feeling great and healthy feels, right? There's
right,
nothing
and
like
imagine never being hangry again.
that. Right, right, right. Well,
Yeah,
Dave, this has been such a lovely time with you today. I really appreciate you sharing, personal parts about yourself with me and your journey into carnivore. And thank you for the hopefulness in your chapter perspective. I hope that we are still in communication well into chapter 3. I can't wait to see what you're up to. So thank you so much.
cheers. Thank you for having me on, Rhonda, really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Thanks again.